So what we're going to be doing is walking through a quick reminder of swing left. Then I want to open this up for Adam to speak on briefly. So as a reminder, then what we're going to be doing here is talking about a quick introduction to the swing left Tri-Valley group. Many of you are fully aware of this. I want to make sure that we hit on what we're focused on right now, how that matches to what Adam needs, and then learn a little bit more about his specific district. So Swing Left Tri-Valley is a grassroots group where we're focused on voter outreach. I mean, you all know that, being superpower volunteers here, and thank you very much for what you do. We've been focusing heavily on canvassing, on phone banking, on postcarding, and then on fundraising. So we balance our opportunities here depending on what is the highest need at any given time. Most recently, this opportunity and a push towards canvassing and phone banking, particularly as we've come out of the pandemic. There's been an opportunity to again re-engage with voters face to face. That is the most effective way to do it, as far as we've found, and then especially when it's in our backyard. Trying to get canvassing operations stood back up has been a big focus for this entire area, and we're proud to be helping that process get stood back up. So, as a reminder, then we have there is a significant pushback from MAGA extremism in Republicans in the House. We have won the House before. They have a slight majority right now, but that is a flippable target for us for 2024. We think that there is an extremely good chance that we can flip the House, but particularly as we see candidates get dropped left and right as the months go on, or I should say members of the House quit out and step out. So the margins keep getting thinner, and the 2024 election looks like a fantastic opportunity for us to target particular races across the country and make sure that we can help swing the House back to blue. We also want to focus on maintaining the Senate majority. That is critical, and that will be difficult. And finally, there is the need to re-elect Biden. Now, this is a three-layer cake, if you will, but there turns to be some areas that are specifically much more valuable than other areas. These are the super state areas. And in those places, we can get a lot more bang for our buck by trying to flip local races that play a role in the House, the state, and the presidency. So we've talked about this before, but as a quick rehash, the super states are the ones which have all of these benefits to them. And in particular, there is the states right around us and some of the House races in California, like the ones we're going to be learning about from Adam tonight. So what we want to do then with tonight's focus is talk about winning back a seat in the House. Okay, the particular seat we care about here is District 13, California District 13. And our candidate is Adam, who's here to speak tonight. So with that in mind, then I wanted to turn that over to Adam to talk a little bit about his candidacy and some of the issues he's been focused on, and how things are going, and also how we can help.
Excellent. Well, thank you for the introduction, and appreciate the opportunity to visit with everyone this evening. I'm a candidate for the 13th Congressional District, running against John Duarte, who's a freshman member of Congress. We ran against each other in the last race in 2022. I was coming out of 10 years in the state legislature, where my state assembly district was essentially the same as this congressional district. About 2/3 of the voters in the 13th Congressional District were represented by me for a decade in the state legislature. John was a first-time candidate, second-time candidate. He had run for something called Modesto Irrigation District Board some years before and lost that seat, but he jumped into an open seat, as did I, post-redistricting, and we had a very competitive, tough campaign. 5 people in the primary, 2 Democrats, 3 Republicans. John and I came out of that, and I lost to John by 564 votes in the general election in 2022. And it was for many of the obvious reasons. The voter turnout was low in a midterm election. Not a surprise to those of us who live here. While Governor Newsom, is a bit of a progressive icon throughout the country and certainly popular in the Bay Area and LA, he's not very popular here where I live and where I've represented the community. And some of the politics of California are a challenge in these regions. It's a Democratic seat. Biden won this seat or would have won this seat by about 11 points in 2020. Just to give you an idea of what a different race it was in 2022. And this is a seat that historically would have been in Democratic hands. In 2012, Obama would have won this seat with 54% of the vote. In 2016, Hillary Clinton would have won this seat with 53.6% of the vote. And in 2020, Joe Biden would have won this seat with just a little over 54% of the vote. And even in the midterm years, Jerry Brown would have won this seat twice in midterm elections, about 53% of the vote. Gavin Newsom in 2018 would have won this seat with 52% of the vote. Well, how did Gavin Newsom do in 2022? Well, he got 45% of the vote in this seat.
Wow.
I got 49.9% of the vote. Almost got over the top, but came up a little short. So, I significantly outpaced the top of the ticket. We ran a very competitive, I think, strong campaign. But at the end of the day, there was just too many low propensity voters, didn't show up to the polls, and we ended up losing by a little bit in what was essentially a Republican turnout year. So incredibly frustrating. And, I spent a little time considering whether or not I was frankly going to stay in elected office in politics and give it another go. I had done about 23 years working with the state legislature in some capacity, including a decade as a member of the state legislature. And I've represented a very moderate, kind of purple district area. And frankly, at times it feels like I'm fighting my own team and the other team at the same time. And so there's part of me that said, I'm ready to hang this up. And politics has moved in a direction of folks just being more extreme on both sides of the aisle. But the problem was, as I went around my community over the last year and was engaged in the same types of things I've always been engaged in, just so many people coming up to me and saying, Adam, we really miss your service in the legislature, your style of politics, the fact that you were able to work with everyone from Democrats to Republicans to independents and really focus on getting things done and improving communities, right? I'm not somebody that spends a lot of time on Twitter trying to say something clever, much more of a workhorse than a show horse. But over my 10 years in the state legislature, we did some really great things. We increased the per pupil funding in rural public schools. We built a medical school program at UC Merced, which is the latest University of California campus here in the San Joaquin Valley, something I'm very proud of and spent most of the 10 years doing. I was the co-author of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act in 2014 with Jerry Brown. I was the co-author of the water bond in 2014. Water is an incredibly important issue, not a sexy issue in most parts of the state, but here where I live, the agricultural economy is really the be all end all. And even if you're not in agriculture, and I grew up in agriculture, my family, my grandparents farmed almonds and pistachios, and my father and my grandfather ran a company called Merced Dairy Supply, where we built dairy barns and sold and installed and maintenance dairy equipment, milking equipment. So, very much grew up in agriculture, and that's what many families in this area depend on and are part of. And so water is just an incredibly critical issue. And I was able to do some great work during my tenure in the legislature on water. And watching John Duarte, who, I've said tonight, and I'll be honest and open about that, I'm a very centrist, middle of the road candidate. I'm a Democrat and a lifelong Democrat and a proud Democrat, but I'm certainly moderate by today's standards in the Democratic Party. And I believe in working with everyone, including Republicans and independents. John Duarte is not that person, right? John Duarte is a MAGA type Republican who chose to run at the last minute. He actually filed for office on the very last day that he had the opportunity to, because Kevin McCarthy, who was very interested in becoming Speaker of the House, was working to get a good candidate to run against me. And they were having trouble finding someone to run against me. And in a district that I had represented well for a long time, where I had good relationships with many of the local elected officials, McCarthy called into my district to numerous city council members, board of supervisor members, and was turned down. You know, they said, no, Adam's done a good job. We're not going to run against him. And at the very last minute, John Duarte entered the race. He was a big Kevin McCarthy and Devin Nunes, if you guys know who that is, former congressman. He was a big supporter of theirs financially, and he's an independently wealthy guy. You know, he's worth $80–90 million, and I think McCarthy figured that John might fund some of his own race, and he certainly did. He put, you know, a few $100,000 of his own money into the last race, and may do so yet again here in 2024. But he ran to let the Republicans take over the House, right? Not to represent this community and work for the people in this community. And the Republicans did take over the House, right? And frankly, what have we seen since then, right? We've seen a lot of fighting. And when I say a lot of fighting, I mean people literally elbowing each other in the state capitol and acting like school children. We've seen a lot of yelling and screaming and extreme positions and letting the most extreme members of the Republican Party really control the agenda for the entire country, right? And for all those reasons, I just really came to the conclusion that I felt a responsibility to my community, to the country at large, and to where I'm at politically as somebody who does believe in kind of centrist politics. I just think we need to return the country to a better place where people are in Washington for the right reasons, remembering that we don't get elected to fight, we get elected to work. And I think, you know, growing up in an ag community where a lot of folks work with their hands to, you know, build a better life and feed their families and frankly feed the world. You know, I always, when I get a chance to talk to a group that's not from the Valley, make sure that I make a point of saying that, you know, a lot of folks here feel a bit like there's a chip on their shoulder here in California, because when you talk about California, people often reference the Silicon Valley, Bay Area and tech, talk about Hollywood, they talk about sunny San Diego. You very rarely, if you say you're from California, have somebody say, oh, is that where the largest farming valley in the entire world is? But that's what we have. We have the largest, most productive agricultural region that feeds not just this state, but much of this country. 2/3 of the fresh fruit and vegetables in this country come out of California, specialty crops, et cetera. 90% of the world's almonds and pistachios come out of California. So we are a very productive, very important region of California. I'm certainly proud of that. I think we deserve somebody in Washington who's going to work on issues that are important to these folks here. And I emphasize the word work, and I keep emphasizing it throughout this campaign because I just think it's become so overused in politics to talk about fighting. And we all do it on all sides, no matter what your political, you know, kind of, I'm fighting for this, I'm fighting for that, we're fighting so-and-so. And I think what we need to do is start thinking about working, right? And we got to think about how can we contribute something productive to this country and to our community. That's why we elect people, right? Whether it's a city council person, a sheriff, a governor, a congressman, a president, right, is to go to work. And on so many of those issues, there's we're more united than we realize, right? When we're talking about having great schools and good healthcare and safe communities and these things, there are a lot of diverse perspectives, right, on how to get there. But there's a lot of folks who I think want to see those things happen. They want to see a Congress that's working for them. And I've certainly come to the conclusion that this Congress isn't working for anybody. And I think we all need to work together hand in glove to do everything we can to install some leadership in Washington, D.C. that actually is going to get back to work, right? And get back to work on the myriad of issues that are important to the diverse set of Americans that we are, right? There's people from all corners, all states, all backgrounds. Here in the San Joaquin Valley, we have a very diverse community, largely of folks who have come from all over the world to a place where agriculture is front and center, and have built businesses and opportunities for their families. You know, Sikh Indians, Hmong, Lao, Mien, Okies, like some of my family who came here and were farm workers in the early 1900s, and others, right? So it's just really exciting to be here with you this evening, and I just can't thank you enough, given the tightness of this race and the importance of getting people out to vote. I just want to emphasize the work you're doing, how critical it is, right? If we get people out to vote in this seat, we're going to win. And I don't mean we can win. I actually would go so far as saying we should win, because the numbers are on our side. You know, in the 2020 election, when we go back and look at the election results for this seat as currently drawn, 126,000 voters in 2020 voted for the Democratic House candidate. 100,000 voters voted for the Republican House candidate. A difference of 26,000 votes, right? A 55-44 election. In 2022, we lost by 564 votes, right? 100,000 people didn't come out to vote in 2022, 70% of whom were Democrats and independents, right? So there's absolutely no reason that we can't win this seat. I've won many elections with most of these voters in this district over the course of the last decade. I'm well known in this community. I've got great support in this community, support that hasn't waned even after I lost, people that have stuck with me. And so I can promise you that I'm going to do my part to put a good candidate on paper, to put a good platform forward, to put an aggressive winning campaign forward. But with your help in getting door to door, making phone calls, writing postcards, we're going to create the energy that's going to get people out to vote. Because again, this is a region that very much feels not inspired by some of the politics today, and not inspired, frankly, by either the Republican or Democratic Party. I think a lot of folks here feel like they've been left behind by both parties, right? And so, you know, there's some work to do, but we're doing that work, and you all are taking, you know, your free time and investing it in my community and our community and my campaign. And I'm very appreciative of it, and enjoy the opportunity to sit and visit with you this evening, and maybe answer any questions I can about, you know, the district or myself or my background, and have a little conversation, and again, just be grateful for the friendship and the help. So appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself, and look forward to chatting with you all if anybody has any thoughts or questions they want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for explaining your candidacy, and for your explaining some of your background. I'll start with a question, then I'd like to open this up to the community here. When you've been speaking to folks in your community, what do you find are some of the issues that matter most to them? I find that that's important when we were going out canvassing. Getting to know what the community cared about was very helpful in preparation for a turnout in the election.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, not a surprise. I think at the top of the list for everybody is really just affordability in California, right? This is kind of a poorer region of California, higher unemployment historically, and some of the basic issues that I think you hear about a lot of places, you know, the cost of energy, certainly the cost, you know, with inflation, the struggling inflation we've had in the economy, that's been tough on people. And there's just more people living paycheck to paycheck here than I think a lot of other communities. So that's certainly top of mind. Healthcare is a big issue, but not in the sense, you know, the debate here isn't really about healthcare coverage, right? Which kind of is always the national dialogue is always so focused on coverage, whether it be, you know, the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, you know, folks that believe strongly in single payer and advocate for that, and all those types of discussion. Republicans who want to repeal healthcare coverage for folks. The discussion here is actually having access to healthcare, right? We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough hospitals, clinics. Madera County, which is one of the 5 counties in this congressional district, just lost last year its only hospital. Right, so there is no hospital in Madera County anymore, and if you need a hospital, you have to either go to Merced County or Fresno County. That's obviously that's a huge imposition and a challenge for many families and the system as a whole. We struggle to have enough healthcare professionals in the area. That's why I fought so hard for the medical school program, right? Was that not so we could have a shiny new medical school in the Valley, but rather so that we could try to train students from Valley backgrounds. The program that we put together actually takes students who grew up in the Valley, puts them in something called the San Joaquin Valley Prime program into UC Merced for their undergrad. And then it's a package 8-year program that includes your medical school education on the back end. That's a combination of UC Merced and UCSF Fresno, where they have a satellite campus of the UCSF Medical School. So it's a partnership program with UCSF. But the idea is to take these students who are from here, whose families live here, get them the best training and education, and hopefully recruit them to stay here, right, and serve the community. Because you can have all the health insurance in the world, if you don't have doctors to go to and other healthcare professionals, you're going to end up in the emergency room, which is the same place you can end up without healthcare coverage. So it's a really important issue. It's something people care about. Back when we had Congressman Jeff Denham for some time before Josh Harder beat him in 2018. Jeff represented the northern part, and then Josh has represented that area since. And I think Jeff lost that race to Josh Harder partially because of some really poor votes in healthcare policy, right? And that translated to families here about their needs. People are concerned about safe communities. I think the challenges with crime in California have continued to worry folks here and frustrate people, and that relates to a host of issues, including some of our drug issues, and then of course our mental health and homelessness crisis that has impacted every community, small, medium, and large, throughout the state, continues to be a challenge. But I do think at the top of the list really is affordability, and it has a lot to do with a lot of families here drive a great distance to work, right? It's not uncommon to drive 15, 20 miles, to and from your job. That's not true in other parts of the state, right? And so obviously that makes the cost of gasoline or things, more impactful problem here, right? Certainly, as we've seen the struggles with PG&E and other utility companies and the increase in, utility cost bills up 30% this year, that's a challenge, right, for families living paycheck to paycheck. So, those are all major constraints and issues for the voters here in the San Joaquin Valley.
Yeah, thank you very much. Van, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, a couple of questions. You mentioned energy and water as being critical issues for your district, and I'm wondering if you had received the endorsement of Rebecca Bauer-Kahn, who's been working on both of those fronts and represents a lot of us here.
Yeah, and I know Rebecca really well. She has endorsed me, and I was in the legislature before she got there and helped her get situated there, and we worked together on a host of issues. Some, in the water space, actually. And I consider Rebecca a friend, and I think she's a great representative and proud to have her support.
And the other question was regarding healthcare access. Biden has expressed a great deal of interest in developing a program that improves access in rural areas. Do you think that issue has been sold well enough, and can it be raised to a higher level in your district?
Oh, I think it needs to be raised to a higher level. And when you ask that question, do you mean, do I think the Biden administration has promoted the program enough or promoted the effort enough? Or are you asking, do I think in general that Congress needs to, make it a higher profile issue?
And mostly, is it recognized by voters in your district that there has been an effort by the Democrats, but kind of stifled by the Republican Party?
I don't think it's recognized enough. I think unfortunately, I mean, my perspective on that question is a little bit that I think the Democratic Party, so to speak, and obviously it's, one of the reasons I'm a Democrat is because I think we have a big tent party with a lot of room for differences of perspective and different people and different backgrounds. And I like that, right? I mean, that's literally why I choose to be a Democrat. And as I watch the Republicans become a more insular party that wants to almost push people out if, for not meeting whatever purity test of the day they have, I think to myself, that's what I don't want to become, right? And I say to my friends in the Democratic Party, I hope we don't become that, because it's always tempting to run purity tests and force everyone to think alike. And and as has been said, if everyone's thinking alike, someone's not thinking. So we need to preserve that. And I just think the world we live in right now with social media and 24-hour news and so on and so forth has done a really good job, and the Republicans have done a really good job of taking kind of the most divisive wedge issues and defining the Democratic Party with them. And I think we can do better as a party of highlighting maybe some more meat and potato kind of issues. And I oftentimes say to folks, I think President Biden's been treated in many respects horrifically unfairly, right? I think history will treat him well, but I feel like a lot of the criticism he's taken, where the Republicans have tried to paint him, for example, as like a far left, president. I mean, it's just inaccurate, right? And if you look at the issues that he's focused on, whether it be like the CHIPS Act, bring back American jobs, he's got some pretty core kind of traditional Democratic positions, I would call them, that he's taken action on, actually got something done legislatively. And I think he has a great deal of empathy. And I think in some respect, his empathy and his kindness almost work against him, because I think he's gone to great efforts to be inclusive of the entire Democratic Party, the far left, the centrist, and everyone in between. And I think because of that effort to be inclusive of everyone, the Republicans have taken advantage of painting him with kind of a far left reputation that's not serving him well in rural communities, right? And is not allowing rural communities to be focused on much of the good work, whether it be in the Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act, et cetera, or to your point, focusing on rural healthcare. Right. And so there's a lot of good stuff to talk about there. And I just don't think they've done a good enough job of talking about it in a way that it's resonated in these rural communities. And I think it's dangerous. I mean, if you look at a map of voter registration, statistics and history over the past 5 decades, you go back 5 decades and you find red and blue dots, living together in communities. And you fast forward to 2024, and increasingly you get a lot of big clusters of blue dots and big clusters of red dots, and I think it's unhealthy for the country. I think the fact that we're literally moving away from each other, not just in our perspectives, but our physical persons, is really a danger, right? And I think we're seeing some of that in our culture and our politics, and it certainly bothers me. And I hope that, if I'm elected to Congress, that I can be a voice that talks about some of those rural issues and that reinvigorates the Democratic Party in rural communities and helps others to do that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Kyoko?
Yes, I have few questions actually. So one of the things is you have huge district, right? There are 5 different counties, and especially like Madera and Fresno are totally untouched. Therefore, it's more leaning Republicans. And how are you going to address that? That's one question. And second question is, I have so far canvassed twice in Patterson. So I felt more like younger generations are not interested in the politics. They didn't vote. They were not even I was talking, and I'm I'm pretty good at doing this, and still I couldn't engage conversation with some of them. And how are you going to attract those populations? Because yes, you sound really good to us, but we are already politically attuned, so we know lots of things. And when the majority of voters, especially in your district, tons of the Hispanic populations, some of them don't even speak English, how can you reach to them? That's basically two questions, right? Three, maybe.
Yeah, let's start there. We can obviously talk some more after. So in the question, I mean, it is a big district, right? It's 5 counties. It takes several hours. The northern part of the district is a community called Lathrop, which sits just south of Stockton. And the southern tip is a little community called Coalinga, which is basically down by Bakersfield in western Fresno County. And it takes a long time to get across it. I spend a lot of time in my truck going to a lot of different places and a lot of different small, farming communities. Those of us who grew up here in the Valley, and, I grew up here in the Valley, live on the same block that I was born on, actually. So I always tell people I haven't gone far in life, but we're used to those kind of large distances, and so many of these communities are so similar to the one I grew up in, and it's easy to connect with people. It's not easy to spend time with everybody all the time. I mean, you got to make choices, right, about where you're campaigning, and we're certainly making strategic choices, but we also make a really committed effort to show my face. And certainly have my volunteers, my supporters, and others show their faces in support of events up and down the district, so that nobody feels left behind. Because that's oftentimes, as I was sharing with you earlier, there's a real chip on people's shoulders here that elected officials come around at campaign time. They don't spend time in communities. They don't support. So it's important to make those Lions Clubs dinners and Seroptimus, clubs and different things that people are active in, and stop in at some of the churches and the other things throughout the district. So I certainly make an effort to do that. As you can imagine, I don't get a lot of time at home, but that's just part of the deal. And 10 years in the legislature, I'm pretty accustomed to having a hectic schedule. On the young person question, it's interesting. Young people really do have kind of a terrible track record, right, of being involved in politics. But young people have a really good track record and good statistics of being involved in service. And I bring that up because I think, to the point I was making earlier about work, when you present politics as the work of service, I think you can engage folks on the right ideas in the right direction, particularly young people. This is a generation, some of the millennials, the Gen Zers, some of these younger folks that are entering the adult world and engaged in work and politics and everything else. It's a fairly conflict averse group. If you look at the culture and the extent to which politics has been so conflict driven, I think it is unattractive, right? And I think people, a lot of cynicism, and I think some of that is the fault of those of us in politics, right? Like the negative campaigning, the assertion that somebody who doesn't agree with me is evil, corrupt, wrong. Wrong's okay. But evil, corrupt, we got to knock that off, right? Everyone it's kind of this name calling thing for everyone that's on the other side of any other issue. And like one thing I've learned after, nearly 25 years of public service, I've almost never been in front of an issue or part of an issue that doesn't have 2, if not 10 different legitimate sides and perspectives to it. Right? When you're dealing with issues, one person's gain is another person's loss, and vice versa. And politics and public policy making is balancing those needs. I actually teach in the political science department at UC Merced. I have for the last 12 years. And I love working with my students on this subject. And the class I teach is a mock state legislature. And so I'll get, 60 students, 40 of whom will be the actual members of the state Senate, and we assign the actual roles to each student. And then we've got about 10 lobbyists, and we have 10 members of the press. And the members of the press, for example, one student will be the San Francisco Chronicle, and one student will be the LA Times, and one student will be the Orange County Register, and they have to produce a weekly newspaper covering what's going on in the course. The legislators or the senators have to introduce 2 pieces of legislation. The lobbyists have to get a piece of legislation introduced, and we even go so far as to give the lobbyists PAC budgets so they can write campaign contributions. And I try to convey to my students a real life sense of what it is. And there's nothing I enjoy more than taking, for example, like a really progressive student who gets to play the role of Shannon Grove from Bakersfield, who's a right-wing, state senator, and working with those students to understand that why does that senator vote the way they vote? Do they vote that way because they're evil people? Or do they vote that way because it's consistent with the voters that they represent and the communities and some of the perspectives, right? And I just think those are really good learning experiences. And my experience with young people is when you engage with them like that, they are really civic-minded and service-minded. And I just think we shouldn't expect to make politics a really attractive thing when we've turned it into such a blood sport where we're accusing everybody who doesn't share our perspective of being corrupt, right? And so that's where I think maybe I have some leadership or maybe a voice that could be important in this larger dialogue nationally about how we do our politics. And I certainly try to lead by example in the way I do my service. Is that helpful or answer your question, or can I delve into some more there? What would?
Well, it answers pretty well. And so maybe you actually have some resources to get to the young people. So how about Latino Hispanic communities?
Yeah, there's a very large, Hispanic community here in the Valley, as you can imagine. Latinos from, all over become a major part of the agricultural workforce and are very active in every county that I represent. About 50, just a little bit over 50% of the district has Latino or Hispanic heritage. And so, those are important issues. We're engaged in media outlets, Hispanic media outlets. We're engaged in community groups. I've got some really great supporters in each and every county who are elected, Latino leaders that are working with me to make sure that we're engaging, every aspect of the community and speaking to, issues and service that makes sense to them, right? And most importantly, making sure they vote. In 2022, we had a 17% drop-off statewide from Latinos in voter turnout. In my district, it was about 17.4%, so just slightly higher than the statewide average. But when half the district's Latino, that's a big deal, right? We can't afford to have that kind of non-participation. So I think we certainly got to make sure we're speaking to all these communities, and certainly the Latino community is probably first and foremost in that group. But like anything, when you go out and speak to communities, whether it's the Hmong or the Lao or the Mien or the Mexican Americans or anyone else, you find that so many of the issues are very similar, right? In fact, I always find it kind of off-putting when the national dialogue and conversation tries to group Latinos into Latino issues or Latino perspectives where you go, I don't know, like the Latino who lives in Fresno drives a truck and owns a gun has a different perspective than the Latino who lives in LA. And we need to be thoughtful about those, regional differences as well. But I've got some great connections with some very prominent leaders in our Latino communities throughout the Valley, particularly in Madera and Fresno, which are disproportionately Latino related to the other northern counties. but there's a presence through all the counties. So it's going to be a big part of our campaign, both in our get out the vote efforts, but also our outreach and our media stuff and so on and so forth.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Erica?
Yeah, I had thank you so much for talking to us today. It's by the way, it's been really interesting and very helpful. I've done some phone banking for you and had a couple of conversations with younger voters and totally agree with you on the affordability concern. I wasn't sure, like, would love to hear your thoughts on like the best way to talk to them about affordability and also and jobs, and especially your record on these things would be really helpful as well to learn more about.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's a tough issue because I think as Democrats here in California, we've ceded a lot of ground on these issues. So we've kind of set a baseline that makes it hard to, you know, I mean, if you take like even the national kind of talking points, right? You hear Democrats talk about democracy and choice, right? Well, obviously neither democracy or choice has anything to do with the price of groceries, right? Or the price of energy for that matter. And so I don't think we have a lot of great, like standard national kind of talking points on the issue. Now my record in the state legislature, it's always been top of mind for me, right? Like I've sat in uncomfortable political positions between the right and the left, trying to look out to make sure that utility bills, you know, are more affordable. I carried legislation to make hydroelectricity in this district, because one of the things unique about the San Joaquin Valley is we have these irrigation districts. Have you guys ever heard of irrigation districts? There's only so many in the state, and they're prominent here. We've got the Modesto Irrigation District, the Turlock Irrigation District, the Merced Irrigation District, which provide both water and power, right? And the power generated by the irrigation districts comes from hydroelectricity and reservoirs that both feed our farms and obviously provide energy. California has a law that doesn't count hydroelectricity towards renewable energy, right? And it does that because there's a lot of folks in the environmental advocacy world who feel strongly that we shouldn't have more dams, and therefore they don't want to incentivize dams by letting hydroelectricity, which is the cheapest, most affordable form of renewable energy, you know, be constructed. So they've intentionally disincentivized that. But what that meant here was 30 and 40% higher utility bills. And why is that? Well, because if you're you know, they're similar to PG&E, except that 100% of their electricity generated comes from hydro, right? So when you have a law that says that, you know, 30 or 40 or 50% of the energy you generate has to be renewable, then you literally have to sell off your hydro and buy renewable from somebody else, right? And you can't sell your hydro for much because it's not renewable. So you sell that for cheap, and then you buy more expensive wind, solar, et cetera, and then it jacks up the rates. So I actually took that issue on and got a bill passed so that our hydroelectricity here could count, you know, reducing, you know, people's electricity bills by, you know, as much as $100 a month, right? Or you know, that. So it's certainly been top of mind issues. I've fought to get more water availability, which, you know, water and affordable energy are so critical to production, food production, manufacturing, many things that we do here. But having said all of that, I'll go back to my original point, which is I just think, you know, talking about affordability is a tough issue, right? Because people will say, oh, well, you know, the Democrats just keep, you know, raising the gas tax or doing this or doing that, making things more expensive. And so, and that narrative has penetrated with folks, right? So oftentimes, you know, what I pivot to is I'm honest with people and I say, look, neither party is going to make things, you know, less expensive through legislation, right? Inflation's here because of some, you know, big factors in the macro economy, none of which we're changing it. And when inflation comes, it doesn't go back down. Like prices don't get cheaper someday. What happens is the rest of the economy catches up, right? And when I talk to voters about that, I said, what we need to be focused on is how do we increase, you know, incomes for families in this valley, one of the poorest regions of the state? How do we bring in higher paying jobs? How do we make investments that provide for higher paying jobs, right? And that's where I feel like Democrats have a good record. You know, my work to pass an infrastructure act, which is both improving our roads and highways and bridges, but also investing in public transit options like ACE Rail, which is going to get extended from Stockton down to Merced eventually, where they're working on that project right now. I got that done working with Governor Brown. I got a medical school program started at UC Merced. I've kicked and screamed and fought to keep the funding for the University of California, Merced growing and the campus growing, bringing in more opportunities. The old dairy supply store. So my family had the dairy supply. We sold dairy equipment, installed it, and we had what you guys would have seen as kind of like a traditional like family feed store, if you've ever been into one in a rural town. And where we used to have our old family feed store, which my family doesn't operate anymore, we still own, my father still owns the building, and he rents it to a company called Milano Technical Group, which does ag tech engineering. So you walk into what used to be our feed store and you find 10 engineers, some of them who were trained at UC Merced, who have started a business to provide tech applications to agriculture. Well, to me, that's just right there embodies the story of like why we fought so hard to get UC Merced in the Valley, right? It's because those kinds of opportunities are creating new industries, innovative stuff, high-paying jobs. There's opportunities around food production for bioenergy, right? Bio waste and other things. We can not only be part of the solution for climate change, but we can also be a real benefit in the investment of new innovative industries and jobs, right? And so these are all the exciting things that I think we need to be working on. Step by step, piece by piece, to both raise the level of educational attainment at our community colleges, CSUs, UC Merced, Fresno State, Stanislaus State, new industry, new jobs, and better paying jobs, right? Because that's what's going to improve the quality of our communities across the board, right? From roads to schools. And it's a tough, long road, but we're doing the hard work, and I've done the hard work in very specific things, right? And so, do I think we can win the argument that Democrats are going to make things cheaper? I don't think we can, right? I'm not even sure we'd be being entirely honest when we look at a lot of the policies, that the Democratic Party is putting forward. But, can we make the investments to make the community better, to make lives better for families? I think we're the only ones doing it. And I think, frankly, I've been challenging a lot of voters lately. When you look at the priorities of the Republican Congress of 2024, every single priority they have is about taking something away from someone, cutting something, or taking someone's rights. And if you think about how mean-spirited that is, right? It's not a difference of policy that I think we should address climate change this way, and they think we should address climate change that way. It's like they want to say, well, there's no climate change and we're not going to do anything, and we're going to make the environment dirtier, and we're going to make no effort to clean anything. I mean, it really it's just lazy. I'm all for alternative ideas if someone's got a better idea, but just being, that Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, every single outlet you can think of, you can find a headline if you get on your computer tonight and Google it that says the most unproductive Congress in history. Well, that's what we're dealing with, and I think we can appeal to folks that these guys just aren't doing the work, the tough work, the hard work to set people up for success, and that my work, whether it be the Infrastructure Act in California, the Water Act. I mean, I got the first water bond passed that had $3 billion for new storage for water, and they're actually building a reservoir north of Sacramento called Sites Reservoir that's a result of my work. I carried legislation to make energy more affordable. I've gotten more money invested in job training programs and new industry opportunities in the Valley, and I fought for UC Merced and better educational opportunities. So to me, those are the arguments about how we're going to turn our economy around and improve things for the next generation, not getting sucked into a discussion about, who's for, who's for more taxes and higher energy prices, et cetera. So is that helpful at all? I mean, I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but I was trying to be thorough.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to answer our questions. We appreciated that. On behalf of the whole community, thanks for coming out and chatting with us tonight and engaging with the discussion to help us, understand your community and how you're approaching the election process. So
Well, I sure appreciate you guys, and I can't thank you enough. I'm sure your lives are just as busy as mine. You got your own things to worry about, but to be generous with your time and your energy and participate in what's going to be an incredibly important election and where your help's going to, really is needed, right? And can make a difference. So thank you for that. And I hope we can maintain an ongoing dialogue and relationship with your group and be supportive whenever possible of things that you're working on and certainly stay in touch.
much appreciated. Well, thank you again. Then.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, everyone.
So I want to turn over the floor here to Kyoko for some final thoughts on CA-13. Kyoko, do I have that right for next steps?
Yes, and
Okay.
I have to find the slides.
Do you want me to bring up the slides? I can pull them right back up.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. So here's some closing thoughts on what we were looking at. Is that coming through?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is actually the CA-13. Most of you have probably already seen this, but where we are focusing on is Stanislaus County because it's closer, and also big enough populations are there. In particular, I picked up the Patterson because there used to be really a strong democratic organizations. Now it's kind of defunct. So this is a good opportunity, not only helping Adam Gray to get elected for the Congress, but also we can actually make difference in the local level. So last Bay Area Coalition canvassing, we actually identified 26 possible volunteers. So we are trying to create that events, so to connect them and engage them. And some of them are younger voters. Next slide. And this is the primary results. So Lathrop is really a small area in this district, but still, they actually voted for Adam Gray. So it's a small margin, but they did actually win for him. And this is significant because he didn't, we didn't mention about it. In this primary, overall, Republicans' voter turnout was about 50% to 60%. And versus combined Democrats and no party preference people, they were about 20% plus minus like 10. The lowest was like 18, 17%. Highest was about 30%. So significantly, Republicans voters voted more, even though entire voter turnout was super low, statewide 35%. But he still actually won in Lathrop. So we have actually less need in Lathrop. And I just talked to the San Joaquin counties, Dem people this evening, and they said they do actually have the 5 city council members, all Dems, and the county supervisors Dems. So it's a Dems stronghold. They haven't started to work together with the county because they actually have the state senate, state house, both are open seat. So we already know those people. Rhodesia Ransom is one for the House. And of course, Jerry McNerney is another for the state Senate. So I'm trying to get everybody to work together through the San Joaquin County. So the need for the race will be less and less as the campaign goes through. So that's another reason, even though it's a close place from us, I'm not interested in going there for this election. Stanislaus County is big enough population for this district if we can actually get out the votes. So we did lose closely in both Stanislaus County and Merced County. We just need to get people out to vote. That's what we need to do. And Patterson is close enough, and I would love to actually start organizing extra canvassing in the first Saturday. If we have enough interest, we can do that. Next slide. So this is what we have right now. So these are not the campaign canvassing. These are the volunteer land canvassing. It's coordination with Dem for the Bay Area Coalition. Swing Left East Bay is doing the Swing Left one. So Bay Area Coalition canvassing is using PDI app. Swing Left East Bay is using the minivan. So there are a slight difference, but both of them are talking to almost every kind of voters right now, because this is not the GOTB yet. So we need to actually ID them, talk to them, and engage them. That's what we need to do. So I am going to the next one, the April 20th Patterson. So if you can join me, that would be great. And I'm pretty sure Jen can attest that it wasn't really scary. Most people are very friendly, right? So I would love you, all of you, to just take a moment, take a day, a month, right? Once a month, it's not bad. And we just need to start there. And this is super important to do it now, because as we all know, Central Valley is even hotter than here in Tri-Valley. So during the summertime, engagement in person through canvassing will be super difficult. So if you can just invest your time now, that will be great. So next slide.
Anything going on with the 13th and the 20th?
Oh, that ban?
Yes,
Okay. I'm going to 20th. Are you going to 13th?
I don't know. I have to talk to Kathy about it.
If we can all go in on the 20th, we can actually see how it's going, and that will help us to start our own management. So if we
Okay.
can all go 20th, that will be great. Okay.
All right. I'll
yeah.
talk to her about it. I'm sure we can do that.
Yeah, and so this is already, most of you have done it. If you have not, please just take the picture of this, and it's a QR code. It's a Google form. If you haven't filled out yet, I believe most of you have already done it. So then just forget it. Next slide.
Oh, wait a minute.
It's okay, Ben. I
You
will send you the
take a
link.
photo. Yep. And we'll push the slides up to everyone too afterwards. Too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move on to the next one.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So of course, where you can check all the actions, the Linktree Tri-Valley Go. And I already mentioned canvassing in CA-13, Patterson in particular, April 20th, and sign up for making calls. This is the Bay Area Coalition Phone Bank. Right now, it's only Wednesdays. In May, they are going to start adding Saturday afternoon 1 to 3 p.m. Unfortunately, we don't know yet that they will call for the Arizona LD2. I have been fighting for it. If the Julie and Stephanie get picked for the sister district candidate, that's a shoo-in. Otherwise, I have to keep promoting them, but I'm pretty sure they will be picked. And your postcards is right now Virginia. I think today there are like 100 Georgia postcards came back. So you can claim that if you want to. And the next campaign we are focusing on is North Carolina. And then Bill Moran is working with Activate America and coordinating, well, actually supplying the partisan postcards. Pennsylvania is just about done. Bill, do you want to talk about it?
Unless I'm mistaken, I think Bill had to step off just a few minutes ago.
Okay, so that's it for me.
So next slide. Yep. So yeah, thank you all